Don't you just love conspiracy theories? Ideas dreamt up by people who notice things in your favourite pieces of media. Some things that can make even the most innocent looking of kid shows turn out to be something deeper. And that is what we are exploring today. Gather round and grab a snack, as today I'm going to dive into the top 10 animated show conspiracy theories. Now, I have done something similar to this before in the past, however the quality is extremely dated. So this list may or may not contain certain elements from the previous list, except I'm going to be doing this one better, with better editing and better sound quality. So without any further ado, let's get on to the number 10 spot. At number 10, we have Garfield is starving. Now this one, I guess, technically isn't really part of the main TV shows of Garfield, as this little theory comes from a comic. However, they are both so closely related, I figured why not include it. This theory goes that Garfield is actually a stray house cat, and that Odie and John have either never existed or have long since passed away or moved out. Garfield is just a starving stray cat left within his house, dreaming and hallucinating all the adventures that you see within the TV shows, comics, and other pieces of media. Now initially, this doesn't sound remotely plausible. However, this comic, which shows the theory front and centre, may convince you otherwise. Here are a few panels of the comic for you to look at, and then you decide on if you think this theory is true, or maybe just a little bit too crazy. But if this was true, maybe they abandoned Garfield on a Monday, and that's why he hates Mondays. Really makes you think, doesn't it? Coming in at number 9, we have Caillou is suffering from cancer. Now this one is a little bit more interesting. Have you ever wondered why Caillou is bald? According to sources, Caillou is 4 years old during the main part of the show of Caillou, and unless he has been aged up since, I will stand firm on him being 4. And typically babies or toddlers, when they grow up past the age of 4 or around 4, they have a full head of hair, or at the very least, some hair. And have you ever wondered why Caillou's parents always tolerate his behaviour? Well, this theory states that Caillou is actually a toddler who's suffering from cancer. This could also explain why there's a white frame border in the background of the show, because Caillou is actually on his deathbed, and that the stories in the show are Caillou's fantasies of his ideal life, or maybe they're just flashbacks, and the reason why Caillou's parents are so lax with him is because they want to enjoy the time they have with their son. Maybe this could paint the whole perspective of Caillou in a different light. Taking the number 8 spot, we have Dexter's family are all dead. Now this one is also maybe a little bit ludicrous, but according to one Redditor, there might be an explanation. This theory states that Dexter's parents and Dee Dee in Dexter's laboratory are actually clones or robots, and that the original versions of these family members have died in one of Dexter's experiments gone wrong. One of the evidence pointing towards this claim is at the ending theme. Enter at your own peril, past the vaulted door, impossible things will happen that the world's never seen before. In Dexter's laboratory lives the smartest boy you've ever seen, but Dee Dee blows his experiments to smithereens. There's gloom and doom, where things go boom in Dexter's lab. But why does it say gloom and doom? Because Dexter doesn't really seem too distraught by Dee Dee, more so annoyed. And according to this Redditor, this is simply because one of Dexter's experiments went horribly wrong, and it resulted in the deaths of his whole family. Dexter, feeling guilty for this, decided to recreate all of them in the most accurate way that he can, even with Dee Dee still annoying him. I don't really know what to make of this theory personally, but let me know in the comments section what you think of it. Do you think it's too ridiculous? Or maybe a missing puzzle piece to solve the show? What do you think? Coming in at number 7, we have The Count is Feasting on the Children in Sesame Street. Sesame Street is definitely one of the most beloved kids shows of all time, and it is definitely a show that isn't really afraid to tackle some of the darker subjects for kids, like divorce, trauma, going to the hospital, and even death. But this theory suggests something a little bit more sinister. This theory tries to argue why the kids in Sesame Street change so frequently. And this theory explains it's not just because they have school, but because the Count is feasting on their blood, and the adults who don't change that frequently are his willing slaves, because they don't seem that fussed that a vampire is wandering the streets. If it was you or I think we would want to keep our children far away from a vampire. And after all, a vampire's gotta eat. What do you think of this theory? I personally think it's quite silly, but it's always fun to speculate. Coming in at number 6, we have The Flintstones is set in the future. Now initially, at first glance, you wouldn't think that The Flintstones would have anything to do with the future. I mean, the whole premise, the look of the show, is 100% the Stone Age, right? Well, maybe not. One theory suggests that the entire show of The Flintstones actually takes place in the future. But more importantly, that The Flintstones and another show, The Jetsons, are in the same universe, happening at the same time. If the series of The Flintstones was really set in the actual Stone Age, then why is there things like pop cultural references? Why are there things like currency and cars in the universe of The Flintstones? But one of the biggest pieces of information to support this theory is the crossover in 1987 where the Flintstones meet the Jetsons. Elroy builds a time machine to send the Jetsons to the future. However, due to a malfunction, this actually puts them in the past, where they meet the Flintstones. However, what if the machine did work, and it actually sent them to the future, but a post-apocalyptic future? After all, the Flintstones did start airing during the Cold War. Maybe this was the aftermath of a nuclear war. And this could also explain why the Jetsons live in the sky, to avoid the radiation and damage at the Earth. And the Flintstones are there, trying to rebuild what once was. Pretty interesting, don't you think? And number 5, Donald Duck has PTSD. Now here's a theory that really goes back. In case some of you don't know, during the times in World War II, Walt Disney was focused on making propaganda/wartime related cartoons. All of these predominantly featured Donald Duck, the most famous one being Der Fuhrer's face. And you may think these were just made for the time, and they wouldn't have any repercussions later. This theory suggests that might not be the case. This one is also again supported by a comic, but we can also judge this based on the cartoons that were made during the times of the war. This comic actually shows Donald going through a PTSD attack, where he is imagining himself during the war. Also, him suffering from PTSD could possibly explain his behaviour, such as his extreme temper and how quick he is to anger, or how he struggles sleeping, and other things of the sort. I personally think this is a theory that actually has a leg to stand on compared to some of the other ones. It would make sense for Donald to have PTSD, especially during those times. But let me know, do you think he has PTSD? Coming in at number 4, we have It's All in Angelica's Head. Now this is a quite popular theory as well, and you could label this a creepypasta, but I like to label it more as a theory. And this of course comes from the famous show Rugrats. The theory goes like this: the entire show, all the main babies except for Angelica, are all dead, and that the entire show of the Rugrats as we see it is all dreamt up in Angelica's head. This can be supported by the parents. The theory goes that Chucky died with his mother, and Tommy was a stillborn, and this is why Chucky's father is such a nervous wreck, because of his wife and son dying. And it's why Tommy's father is always making toys in the basement, as a coping mechanism to deal with the loss of a son. And you may wonder how the DeVilles fit into this. Well, this goes that the DeVilles' parents actually had an abortion, and this was before they could determine the baby's gender, so Angelica not being able to tell if it would be a boy or a girl, she decided to create the twins Phil and Lil. Dark, isn't it? Well, it gets worse. This theory continues into the All Grown Up series, where all the characters are grown up. And this states that Angelica is actually a bipolar schizophrenic who got addicted to drugs as a teenager, leading her to recreate her childhood in an imaginary world, and that maybe some of the things that happened in the Rugrats were just things she was dreaming of because of these things. And the theory also states she passes away of an overdose at the age of 13, at the end of All Grown Up. Not such an innocent kids show now, is it? Coming in at number 3, we have The Pigeon Man Takes His Own Life. Now, this theory has been debunked. However, for the longest time, this theory actually had some merit towards it. This theory is about Hey Arnold, and specifically the episode of The Pigeon Man. Arnold meets the titular Pigeon Man, and he eventually learns how some people just don't do well with other people. And through a series of hijinks in the episode, the Pigeon Man's beloved pigeons, who are really his only friends that he cares for, are scared away. This leads Arnold and Pigeon Man to go to the roof. Arnold is completely appalled by the actions, and the Pigeon Man is disappointed in the humans, and this is the final deciding factor. He decides to leave the city, but he thanks Arnold for his kindness. Then the Pigeon Man wraps his pigeons around him, and he flies away. Or is that actually what happened? According to this theory, the Pigeon Man actually jumped off of the building to his end, and that Arnold was so heartbroken at the scene he witnessed, he hallucinated or dreamt up of the scene that the Pigeon Man just strapped the pigeons to him and flew away. And again, for the longest time this theory had merit. However, when the Jungle movie was released, this theory was officially debunked by showing the Pigeon Man at the end, alive and well. I do like this theory, despite it obviously being debunked now. What do you guys think of it? Before the Jungle movie was released, do you think it had some merit? Let me know. Coming in at number 2, all of the characters in Winnie the Pooh have psychological disorders. This theory is one that I've known about for several years, and it's genuinely one of my favourite theories. This theory suggests that all of the characters in Winnie the Pooh all have psychological disorders, and they go as follows. Eeyore is a pretty obvious one. He has clinical depression. That's why he's always so down in the dumps and never really seems to be happy. Piglet has generalized anxiety disorder. It explains why Piglet is such a nervous wreck in the show. Another obvious one is Tigger. He has a serious case of ADHD. That's why he's so hyper, bouncing all around, and why he's so full of energy. Winnie himself has an eating disorder. This explains why he is so overly fixated on honey, and why he always wants to eat honey. The owl has dyslexia and short-term memory loss. Although he is shown to be very, very bright, it is also known that he has trouble reading, like him mistaking the word school for skull. Also, Owl tends to forget things as quickly as he says them, further proving the dyslexia and short-term memory loss diagnosis. Kanga has social anxiety disorder. She is extremely overprotective of her son, and would never really let her son make his own decisions because of how overly protective she is because of her social anxiety disorder. Roo has autism. He lacks general awareness of his surroundings and overall danger, and he has an attachment and fixation of always sitting in his mother's pouch. The rabbit has OCD. He is extremely orderly and obsessive, and always likes things clean or in a very specific set of ways. And finally, Christopher Robin himself. He is the only one who can see the characters. This is due to him having schizophrenia. And maybe after this theory, all the characters in the 100 Acre Woods are a little bit more interesting than at first glance. Don't you think? Taking the number 1 spot, the Smurfs represent the KKK. We all know the Smurfs as lovable blue creatures who get into hijinks and all sorts of adventures. But this theory suggests that maybe they aren't exactly what they seem. The theory goes that these Smurfs that we've grown to love are actually representative of the KKK. This theory is further supported by the Smurfs' clothing. They all wear white, they all match, like that clan. But there is one outlier here that I'm sure some of you might wonder about. What about Papa Smurf? And actually, the leader of the KKK wears a red hat. And who else wears red? None other than the leader of the Smurfs, Papa Smurf. And this theory extends further on the racism, and that the villain Gargamel is a money-loving, big-nosed, dark-haired guy. And this really sounds like a bad Jewish stereotype, and whose cat is called Azrael, which is the name of the angel of death in Jewish tradition. If this theory is true, this would make you think about these lovable blue creatures in a completely different way. And that was the list. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, hit the bell so you're always notified of my latest videos, and be sure to comment down below what you think of these theories. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, my darks. If you enjoyed the video and you would like to continue the scares, be sure to click one of the videos on the left or right, and click the channel logo to subscribe, and check the description if you want to join the Discord. Thank you for watching, and stay scared.